Leave it to the Red Wings to win a game, and yet somehow the majority of the fan base feels worse about the team coming out of the game than they did heading into the game. Now listen, at the end of the day, a win is a win, and I'm sure Detroit will take the 2 points any way they can get them, but holy shit was this one of the most boring games that I have ever watched in my entire life. Last night the Red Wings were able to pick up the road victory over the New York Islanders by a final score of 1-0. Patrick Kane was the lone goal scorer in this game, but really the biggest story coming out of this game was the shot count. The shots in this game finished 29-10 in favor of the New York Islanders. The Red Wings' 10 shots on goal is the fewest shots on goal they've had in a victory since 1959. Take a bow, Alex Lyon, because he absolutely stole this game for the Red Wings. Based off of the way the Red Wings have played up until this point in the season, it honestly feels like a miracle that they currently find themselves 3-3. Alex Lyon has definitely been a huge bright spot early on this season, and just like last season, it looks like he's going to be the guy that takes the reins as this team's #1 goalie. He's currently 2-1 with a shutout and a save percentage of .955. According to Evolving Hockey's model, he also ranks 4th in the entire NHL in goals saved above expected with 6.67. For me, another bright spot definitely has to be Simon Edvinsson. I thought the game against the Islanders, albeit a very ugly game, was probably the best of his career up until this point. He was fantastic defensively. He made a lot of big-time defensive plays using his size and using his reach, so that was definitely a positive takeaway from a game that otherwise didn't really have many aside from the Red Wings getting 2 points. Hopefully things start to click for the Red Wings soon though, because you're not going to win very many games playing like the way they played last night against the Islanders. With 11:50 to go in the third period, it actually had Detroit's shot total at 11, and then when the final buzzer went, their shot total was 10. They actually had -1 shot in the final 11 minutes and 50 seconds of the game. Shifting focus now and talking a little bit about a team that has quietly gotten off to an unreal start to the season, and that team is the Minnesota Wild. I'll be honest, heading into the season, I really didn't expect much from Minnesota. I figured they were in for another season similar to last year where they were too good to finish in the basement of the league and be in contention for a first overall draft pick, but not good enough to be a legit threat to make the playoffs. I figured Minnesota wouldn't be big-time players in the Western Conference until at least next season when the buyout penalties for Zach Parise and Ryan Suter go from a combined $14.7 million in dead cap space down to just $1.67 million next season. 16.8% of the Minnesota Wild's cap space this season is currently just dead cap space that they can't even use, so you have to imagine it's probably pretty difficult to build a legit contender when that's the case. So that's why I felt like next season maybe we'll see them get back to being one of the better teams in the Western Conference when they're able to really load up. So far this season, albeit it is still very early on, they're kind of proved me wrong. The Minnesota Wild currently find themselves 4-0-2 through their first 6 games, and they have had a relatively easy schedule up until last night where they were really tested. They were on the road against the defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers, who were getting Matt Tkachuk back in the lineup, and the Minnesota Wild made a statement. They dominated Florida and won that game by a final score of 5-1. Record aside though, the most impressive thing about the Minnesota Wild so far this season is the fact that they have yet to trail in a game for a single second, which is an insane stat, especially considering the fact that they have 2 overtime losses. But in both of those games throughout regulation, the Minnesota Wild either led or the game was tied before they ultimately lost in extra time. That is a total of 360 in-game minutes up until this point that the Minnesota Wild have not trailed in to start the season, which is the second longest streak in NHL history, only behind the 1969-1970 Boston Bruins. Their streak ended at 457 minutes and 21 seconds. So Minnesota is chasing history right now. If they're able to get through their next game on Thursday against the Tampa Bay Lightning without trailing, they would then have the chance to break this record on Saturday against the Philadelphia Flyers. Whether they break the record or not though, unreal start to the season for the Minnesota Wild. Philip Gustafsson has been unreal for them in net. He looks a lot more like the guy we saw in the 2022-23 season as opposed to last season. Speaking of teams that have gotten off to an unreal start to the season, the Calgary Flames just keep on winning, and for me, up until this point in the season, they're probably the most surprising team in the league. After last night's comeback shootout victory over the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Calgary Flames currently find themselves 5-0-1 through 6 games and sit atop the Pacific Division. Similar to what I said about the Minnesota Wild, I didn't expect much of anything from the Calgary Flames this season, and actually I expected them to probably be a lot worse than a team like Minnesota. In my season standings prediction video, I think I actually said I feel like the Calgary Flames are closer to being a team that could be in contention for a first overall draft pick than they are to being a playoff team, and I can't imagine I was the only one that felt that way. In the eyes of the fans, the Calgary Flames were supposed to be a team that's heading into a rebuild, but early on this season, the Flames are crapping all over the idea of a rebuild. Jonathan Huberdeau has looked the best he's looked as a member of the Flames so far. Rasmus Anderson has been unreal. Dustin Wolf, through his first 3 games of the season, is perfect with a record of 3-0 and a save percentage of .936. He's definitely going to be atop the list of Calder Trophy candidates early on this season, and recently we've learned that Calgary Flames general manager Craig Conroy is already on the hunt to improve the roster, specifically looking to add a top 6 right shot centerman, and apparently this isn't anything new, as Craig Conroy recently confirmed that he has been on the lookout for a centerman since the very moment he traded Elias Lindholm. In a recent interview with Eric Francis of Sportsnet, Craig Conroy said, "We lost Lindholm, a right-hand center in your top 6, and that's something you'd want to find." Reports are indicating that Craig Conroy is in the market for a centerman between the ages of 23 to 25 who already has some NHL experience that can be a part of the Calgary Flames long term, and also that Conroy would be open to parting ways with a first-round draft pick for the right player. With all of this coming out, it immediately kickstarted trade speculation. Players like Dylan Cousins and Trevor Zegras names have been floated around as potential fits for the Calgary Flames because they kind of fit that mold, between the ages of 23 to 25 who already have NHL experience. I'm really interested to see how this all plays out. Again, apparently Craig Conroy has been looking for a centerman since he traded Lindholm, but you have to imagine Calgary's hot start to the season has made him even more eager to bolster the roster. So that is pretty much all I got for this video. If you enjoyed this format and you want to see more videos like this in the future, then be sure to leave a like. That is the best way to let me know that you enjoyed. And as always, I want to know what you guys are thinking, so sound off down below on any of the topics that we talked about in today's video. Let me know how you're feeling, and most importantly, if this is your first time checking out the channel and you want more NHL content just like this all year round, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I will talk to you all again soon.